Welcome back to another one of my old school mechanic videos. This time I'm showing you how to set up a pair of two-barrel Webers and how to synchronize them and adjust the fuel jets on all four barrels to match. And this will give you maximum horsepower, of course. I'm showing in detail how to set up the system. I'm going to be showing the vacuum lines, the fuel system, uh, even the manual chokes that I converted it over to. And in a way to help it make it easy for you to set this up and run a pair of your own Webers and every day on the street or the highway like I do, not specifically drag racing or anything. This is no different than the rest of my videos because I will hold all the information that's I have written down at the top half of the screen or above it, because typically YouTube will always, when you pause a video on their screen, will have something across the bottom of it that will block the view of everything that's under it. And I do this on purpose so you can come back, pause my video, copy down and or write down what you need off of it or read it further, because I'll be going through the slides probably faster than you can read everything that are on them, especially close to the end with the details and so forth. So let's get started. This first slide is a complete layout of all that is needed to make these carbs operate as they should be designed to. And it'll meet today's emissions and run them on the street and highway every day use if needed. And I'm starting with the fuel supply first, breaking it out of the chart. And as for everyone watching that have only worked with uh, computer controlled fuel injection, you're about to learn some old fashioned carburation. All manually adjusted, wrenches and screwdrivers instead of PCMs and ECUs. I run a very low pressure, 6 pound electric fuel pump outside of the fuel tank, filtering the fuel before the pump gets before it gets in the pump, and the pump turns itself off while holding the pressure in the line, and it'll come back on as its pressure drops. Um, the pressure regulator is necessary because of them being Webers. It's set at about 3 pounds, and because unlike the American cars back in the day when carburation was the thing, they used to run on about 6 or 8 pounds of fuel. Basically, all of them in America were made that way. But in Europe, they stuck with about 3 pounds for all the carburetor companies that were making carburetors in Europe. And these Webers that are made in Spain, and they meet that old standard of about 3 pounds. Now let's talk about the fuel vapor system. First, you need to know, unlike fuel injection, the carburetors are not operating on the 3 pounds of pressure that's being supplied. There are actual fuel bowls in the top of each carburetor, and it works identical to the holding tank of water in your toilet. Really, very same system. The float in the carburetor bowl is designed to hold back by a little valve attached to it 3 pounds of pressure or thereabouts. And while the bowl is full, the carburetors are allowing the fuel to, by gravity, to flow down to the jets, which are regulating how much of it's flowing into the barrels. That we're going to get into adjusting here pretty soon. And the fuel bowl sitting at the top of the carburetor allows for this gravity feed of the fuel through the system. And just like normal, as the bowl drops in level, the little valve opens and allows more fuel into the bowl. Now, this will restrict your angle that you can drive your vehicle on. It's about to 30 degrees. That's about the max. After that, the carburetors won't function. Now, technically, you have three fuel tanks, and the vapor, to meet emissions today, the vapor has to be removed from them and then sent to, in our case, one of the carburetors to be sucked into the motor and burned with the fuel. And the fuel tank needs to be on its own system, separate from the carburetors. And to do this, a two circuit type canister is required. I've listed a part number for the one that I'm using. Now, the fumes that are from inside the motor are also a part of what has to be required to be burnt, run through the carburetor and out the exhaust in a sealed system. And I simply run a tube from the PVC valve on top of the valve cover to the front carburetor. And that way, the front carburetor has the PVC, and the rear carburetor's got the vapor canister. Now let's take a look at the vacuum system that will make the canister operate. Um, I've shown two ways: a double circuit or a single circuit that tees the two lines that go to the canister. A cold motor, right after it's cranked up, really can't handle all the vacuum and the fumes and so forth, trying to get it to warm up and run. So the CTO valve compensates for this by not opening and sending a vacuum out to the canister until the motor's water temperature is at least 115 degrees. Now let's get the vacuum to the distributor. I run a line from both the carburetors. This is a personal preference. You can plug one carburetor and run a single line. It'll probably work for you. Because I'm running an HEI distributor, I have to use the ported accesses that's provided by the carburetors. And these new Webers provide those that match back in the 1990s carburetors that will provide those access for vacuum advance on distributors. This particular model of carburetor from Weber comes with electric chokes. And I chose to run manual chokes instead of them. And Weber has conversion kits for this made specifically. They're easy to get. And my word of advice is to remove the front carburetor off the manifold to get room enough to install the choke on the rear carburetor. Now, before we go into actually making a baseline and synchronizing the fuel jets, I'm going to show this diagram one more time. And this is your system that works just fine for me to get street driven, everyday type of use out of your carburetors, along with meeting what is typically today's standard emissions. These steps we're taking to synchronize the idle mixture screws. If they're done successfully, will also determine if you're going to need to change the main air jets that are located inside the carburetor. For best results of what we're doing, the motor needs to be running and then shut down while it's still hot. With the first step, to back out the idle speed screws free of the throttle stop lever that they're pushing against, with a little air gap in between them, then run the screw back down, just touching the lever but not making it move. And as accurately as you can, screw it in 1/2 turn maximum. As I've shown, typically the normal slack that's in the linkage, as you know, the front screw that you just screwed in, as it's rotating the rear carburetor at the same time because you're linked together. There'll be a little bit of difference between the two, and in the diagram you see that the wider area than the narrower space on the second carburetor. Go back there with that rear carburetor and screw in the adjustment to make up for the linkage slack so that you know you have uh, both sections of the linkage accurately 1/2 turn. So much focus is on that half a turn is due to getting the throttle plate edge to cover the enriching progression holes, as in my diagram there. These are inside each barrel, and you can't see down in there very well at all, or we would be doing it from sight. But this is ensuring that the fuel is only flowing through the mixture screws. Making these adjustments also require a completely unobstructed airflow. The chokes need to be 100% open. Take the air cleaners off if you need to and check, especially if you're using electric chokes. You will probably need to block them open in some way or form that gets them 100%. These idle mixture screws that we're fixing to start adjusting here are all on the lower base of the carburetors. And take your Sharpie and mark up half of the screw head, and then create yourself a cheat sheet. I make 4 columns of circles, and they're about 6 or 7 deep. The circles will be the screws representing the carburetors, carb 1, carb 2, as you see there on the sheet. And believe me, this old man, I have to use this. I couldn't do this without doing this and use a cheat sheet. I've staged the tools that you'll be needing on the fender and getting ready to start doing this. The best thing to get to the screws that are in between the carburetors is this little miniature ratchet. It holds bits instead of sockets. As you can see, I've loaded it with a screwdriver bit. The first row on the cheat sheet is the seated screws. Seat them just barely tight, then turn them back out 1 full turn. And so the imagery on the sheets is exactly what their seated position and their 1 turn out position is obviously the same. Now, crank the motor up. While the motor is idling rough and shaking around, you're now tasked with making these turns in the mixture screws and getting in there and close fit and everything else. It's very aggravating to start with, but after about 15 or 20 minutes of this, let's now take a look at your results on the cheat sheet. The first adjustments are to turn in to find the baseline point that the motor is unable to run. I went in an eighth of a turn, which by the time I was on the second carburetor, the motor had died. Go ahead, finish turning the mixture screws even though the motor's not running. Now, take the second action by a quarter turn out, recrank the motor. Now go a third turn. There's basically no change because from here on out, the fuel is just becoming rich and it's going out the tailpipe as black exhaust. With no improvements in the smoothness of the idle, you'll realize that best thing to do now, in my case, on my fourth turn, I went back a quarter, and that put me right in the range of where I felt like it was going to run the best. Now, not shown on the cheat sheet, I did take it about a 16th more in, and the results of it is this. As for deciding about the sizing of the main idle jets, your cheat sheet will tell you the answer. All this trial and error adjustments are as instructed by Weber's own instructions. Only the cheat sheet is my idea. If after you've got through setting everything up and your screws are a half or less turned from the seated position, the main idle jets are too small. And then the other side of the story is if the screws ended up to being 1.5 turns from the seated position, the main idle jets are too large. A full set of all the different jets and multiple sizes of each comes with your carburetors. If changing the main idle jets is required in your case, it is necessary to remove the top cover of the carburetor, and it's easily done without having to remove the carburetor from the motor. And if in the future I need to do this, I'll make a video how to do it and add it to my stack of videos about old school mechanicing. But for now, my setup is running just fine. Thank you again. I hope this is instructive on somebody who's setting up something that'll work on anything that you've got. V8s. This is just on an inline 6. And take a look at the rest of my old school mechanic videos, and I appreciate greatly that you watched this. Thank you again.